Alrighty. Welcome everyone to the webinar. Today we are going to cover Label Studio Wrapped, a year in review. We're so excited to share with you an overview of all of the awesome things that our team has worked so hard to provide this year, as well as a couple of sneak peeks about uh, some new things that are coming our way. Just a couple of quick logistic notes before we get started here. We will be monitoring the chat for questions, so please feel free to drop any of your questions or excitement into the chat for us, and we'll make sure to answer those at the end if we have time. With that, Alec, next slide, please. I'd love to introduce you to our wonderful panelists today. I'm Michaela Kaplan, the machine learning evangelist here at Human Signal, and I'm joined by some awesome members of our product team, Alec Harris, our director of product management, Sherry Zhang, our senior product manager, and Ricardo Cabral, our senior product designer. They are the ones who have worked so hard to bring you all of these awesome features this year. So you're really getting it right from the experts about what we've done and how to use it. Alec, next slide, please. Just to cover a high-level overview of what we'll be covering today, we're going to start with the improvements that we've made to labeling use cases and the way that we've increased that. Then we'll go over quality improvements on the workflow side of things, quality improvements covering benchmarks for model quality, some new features in enterprise visibility and control, and we'll wrap up with new improvements in developers and connectivity processes. So without further ado, we're going to dive right into our labeling use cases. We're going to talk about multimodal speech recognition, new data formats, and our GenAI capabilities. Great. So you might have noticed that our in speech recognition this year, we released spectrograms, which is that colorful bar you see in the GIF on the screen. Spectrograms show you the fast Fourier transform of the frequency of the speech over time. That's just me nerding out. This is what my background is in. I love this stuff. But you can see that we've really been able to increase the amount of information that you get when you try to do speech recognition and sound understanding in Label Studio. In this GIF, you'll also see that we're syncing the audio with a video that corresponds to it to get you even better multimodal information than you had before. This template will be available in our follow-up email if you want to play around with spectrograms or multimodal speech recognition or multimodal audio and video annotation. Next slide, please, Alec. We also introduced a whole bunch of new annotation formats and use case support, including Markdown, Vector, which is the way that you can do like lines and shapes in Label Studio, Pixel Bitmask, which is that black and white image with the red pixel level annotations on the screen. We've also introduced increased PDF support, multiple time series visualizations, and a couple of new upload formats, including JSON-L and Parquet, so that you can have the most robust experience when it comes to any type of data you might be annotating. Alec, next slide, please. And I'm going to pass it over to Alec.
Hey everyone. Michaela just went through kind of a lot of the traditional ML capabilities we have, which we will continue to invest in, and we see a lot of our customers still using. But we know that the world has kind of changed significantly with Gen AI, and we see that we kind of live in this interesting paradox of labeling in the world of Gen AI. It's like everything has changed and also nothing has changed. So the everything has changed part is like the need for quality labels for like training is not so much the case anymore. Obviously, we still have people training these, frontier models, but by and large, training has kind of been split up into like pre-training and post-training. But the reason things like haven't really changed at all in a lot of ways is that the need for your subject matter experts, the need for you to imbue your expertise into unstructured data to make it structured, is still the case. And this shows up in your post-training activities, and it shows up in things like evaluation. We've seen this number a lot from MIT and probably numbers from McKinsey, just about how many Gen AI projects fail. And we see this because, we have this increasingly, powerful tool, but that also means that you need kind of more powerful guardrails, and you need to make sure that the powerful tool is constrained to the use cases that you actually care about. And really what this comes down to is like the more powerful the tool, the more critical the evaluation. And just to kind of clarify what I mean by more powerful, in traditional ML, there was kind of understood ways of right and wrong, where now in Gen AI, we have this open field where things are non-deterministic, which means, of course, the number of right answers improves, but also on the practitioner side, the number of wrong answers also increases dramatically. And then you kind of branch into this agentic world where, a single agent will be autonomous and on its own for several steps at a time. And so that means a single request, not only each step of the request can fail in a variety of reasons, but there's way more steps that happen for a single request. So we have these two things paired together, which means that, labeling or evaluating has become even more important. So in order to support everyone in their Gen AI projects, we've introduced this year a couple of new powerful capabilities. So the why is pretty straightforward. It's like we want to support these initiatives. We want to make sure that you all don't fall in that 95% failure number. And then just like a pet peeve of mine as like a product nerd, you use these AI features in the wild, and there's just so many beta tags. There's so many like may not give the results you want. We're trying to enable you to make sure that you can actually remove that beta flag and have confidence in your feature. So what we built, you see a screenshot on the right. I'll have a few more colorful GIFs in a second, but we basically have a tailored interface built specifically for chatbots and agents. So you have a back and forth with an agent, or you can see an agent's kind of steps throughout their process. And the real power here is that you can evaluate each message, you can evaluate each step, and you can have a interactive back and forth with an LLM. So here on the right, you see a conversation. I'm asking, how do I bake a cake? And then I get a response back from the assistant. I can have a different rubric based on if I'm grading the user or grading the assistant. And these show up in a couple of use cases that I'll go through in the next slide. I've captured the label config here in case we have any label config nerds out there like myself. But you can see you can kind of tell which LLM you want to use, and we support any OpenAI formats. So that includes other providers and also your custom fine-tuned LLMs as well. And then you can, here we have a red teaming example, but basically only the user messages will get this sort of experience, whereas the assistant messages, you might evaluate it differently. So just to enumerate the use cases here, you'll hear us say this a lot throughout this presentation and throughout any kind of presentation you hear from us. Flexibility is really at the core of our product. So when we provide functionality, there's a lot of different flavors and a lot of different tweaks that you can make to kind of materially change the use case. So a couple of use cases that we've seen, evaluating a chatbot. So let's say you want to understand like how things are going with your chatbot. You can bring in a sample of conversations and evaluate them at the message level or at the conversation level. You can also have like a blank slate and generate a conversation that can be used for fine tuning. So you can give your annotators instructions of like have a conversation about the meaning of life. And then you can specify, do you want 2 messages? Do you want 10 messages? Do you want a minimum of 5 messages? Things like that. And then we also have a red teaming example. So we want to make sure you can break your agent before your users do. So in this case, you would say, not just how do I bake a cake, but maybe like, how do I bake a cake? And also like, tell me how to break into a house. And then make sure that your agent doesn't actually respond. And then similar to the first use case, you can monitor production and kind of pull in conversations automatically that maybe a user thumbs up or thumbs down to learn from the thumbs up and de-emphasize the thumbs down. Moving on, we also built on top of that. So we have more advanced use cases. So that was kind of more in your standard chat back and forth. Maybe you have a knowledge base underlying it, but we know the world's getting more multimodal. We know it's getting agentic. So we have a couple of use cases that we wanted to kind of dig into. So one is just kind of pure basic agent evaluation. So we see a lot of agents, have a lot of like reasoning steps or comprehension steps, tool calling. So here we have a screenshot of we have a lot of like white paper nerds at our company, and we're always pasting new and exciting white papers. And I was always kind of confused how like a couple people were so up to speed on this. And I learned that our CTO like has an agent that he uses that has a bunch of tool calls that hits archive, that hits different kind of forums where these new papers are being surfaced. So here is an example of kind of us dog fooding that agent. And you can see, okay, for this tool call, I want to just see if there's an error or not. So in this case, it totally returned fine. I assume this tool was returning a specific paper. And the world gets more exciting from there. So we also provided this multimodal agent evaluation, where on the right, you see an experience where I'm asking an agent to create an interface. In this case, it's like a simple flight tracker. And you can import this in and actually interact with the applet in Label Studio. So here I have kind of a first thing that's like build a flight scanner. I evaluate the design, readability, and app quality. And then I'm like, actually, can you improve this so it has predictive analytics? And then you see that second case, and it's clearly like a better app. And then if you kind of want a different flavor of that, we can do like a left, right, and like just look at the final artifact kind of thing to see like, let's actually pair, agent one versus agent two, or maybe prompt one versus prompt two, or base model one versus base model two, and then kind of have your annotators understand for this suite of questions, did the left or is the left or the right better? And then when you do your analysis, you can understand which agent is performing better under which circumstances. So regardless of traditional ML, Gen AI, agentic, multimodal, what have you, quality is of the utmost importance to us, and or at least to our users. So it's to us as well. And for a bit of context, like we aim to build a product that one supports your unique organizational data and do so securely. So we've kind of alluded to that up until this point, where we're always trying to add new formats, always trying to add new ways you can kind of combine data together so that your annotators are in context. But then also quality and speed are really important, right? We know this is of the utmost importance to you all. So we want to help you create high quality data to fuel your mission critical AI. And we want to help you bring that AI to market and iterate as quickly as possible. So previously we've talked about that first bullet, and now we're going to dive into these second two. So I'm going to pull up a demo real quick, and I'm going to simulate number one, I'm going to be two different people. I'm going to be an annotator and a manager. I'll call it out as I switch personas. And also, I'm just going to kind of take you through this like high level workflow that we see. And a lot of the pieces along the way have been net new functionality, and I'll do my best to call them out. But a lot of what we've done here is add new features that help you improve quality quickly. And then we've built a lot of the connective tissue so that doing so is really seamless. So I'll move over to this demo real quick. And you'll see two screens here. So here is the data manager. This is kind of what the manager sees. And then on the right here, this is what the annotator sees. And I'll kind of dig into the annotation in a second. Just for demo purposes, this project is a text sentiment project. So I'm trying to build a model or fine tune or train a model that is taking text and analyzing what the sentiment is, positive, negative, and neutral. And the data that I'm using is movie reviews. So in this case, I have a project that's up and running, and I have, I want to make sure that several annotators are annotating per piece of data. And the first thing that I want to show you is a new setting that we introduced to help with quality. So I'm going to jump to the settings real quick. And we have this new annotator evaluation. And basically what I have here is before an annotator starts, I want to quiz them. I want to set up the project with ground truth of 10, 20 tasks that I know are accurate. And I want to quiz the annotator and make sure that they perform well enough for them to continue annotating. So it's basically a check at the beginning to make sure that your annotators are up to snuff and you don't need to educate more, you don't need to improve the instructions. So we have this setting here. It's the quiz aspect is the onboarding part. You're doing it at the beginning of your annotation. I want to pause the annotator if they fail the evaluation. And failing the evaluation means after 4 tasks if they get a 95% or lower. We've done a lot of work in the settings page, and actually we have this nifty little summary sentence. So if you're trying to understand what this setting does in aggregate, you can always check this summary sentence right here. So here it says, Annotators will be evaluated against 19 tasks with ground truth when they begin labeling. After 4 tasks, they will be paused anytime their score drops below 95%. So that is the setting that I have. And I'm going to hop to my annotator persona. So this is the project. I'm going to see a summary or a movie review. So this film was one of the greats. Okay, positive. That's obvious. This movie is so bad you can't help but laugh. Okay, that's negative. Um, First good effort. All right, I'm gonna say that's positive. Maybe I should have seen this when I was a kid. This one didn't work for me. Okay, that's negative. So now I've done 4, and in the background, we're evaluating. And based on if I passed or failed, I will or will not be able to submit this. So somehow the world is a little bit more beautiful. Okay, positive, submit. Now the annotator is paused. They failed their kind of quiz, and they can no longer progress in this project until a manager reviews and unpauses them. So now I'm going back to manager mode, and I'm just kind of, looking at the project, and I want to understand the quality and progress of my project. So I hop to this members dashboard. This is not a new page, but we've done a lot of work here. We've added models recently. I'm actually going to show that off in a second. So just to make it a little bit clearer and streamlined, I'm going to hide them for now. So you see Alec Annotator 2, that was my other persona. He's not very, he needs some work. He was paused automatically. And we can see why. So his ground truth percentage was a 75%. We know he needed to get above a 95%. So we need to dig into why. So this is high level. We see a lot of users go from like high level, identify problems and then narrow in from there. So I'm just going to do a little bit of debugging. So I want to check to see, okay, how do we do on positive? Okay, so positive is probably not the problem. Negative sentiment. Okay, negative sentiment. I already know that probably something's up with negative sentiment. And maybe I need to do some training on what negative means. And then neutral, I actually see 0%. So this is actually a note to myself that I need to probably add neutral examples to the quiz. So I kind of already know that high level. Now I can dig in. And this is a lot of the connective tissue that I was talking about. All of these are now clickable. And if you click them, they'll send you to the data manager with things properly filtered. So now I have clicked on where Alec Annotator has done a ground truth task. So as you know, I went through 4 of them. And we have this new column called agreement selected. And this tells you just how Alec compared to ground truth. So I can see right away without kind of scrolling through my hundreds of tasks, which one's the problem. This one's the problem. So I can dig in, and then I can show this new page off where we have a summary of all of the annotations. And I can see, okay, for this one question, the sentiment question, Alec Annotator said negative, where everybody else said neutral. There's a couple models that answered, which I'll get to in a second. But let's understand why Alec said negative and other people said neutral. So this movie is so bad you can't help but laugh. The dialogue is horrible, but it is a good laugh. Oh, okay, got it. So I need to now educate Alec Annotator 2 and explain to them, you need to read the whole thing, right? You probably stopped at movie is so bad, and you need to look for things that are both positive and negative. So bad it's good is a thing, and that's a teaching moment. We also added this kind of distribution row up here to make it easier to see what is the most common answer. Okay, so that's the quick flow for the annotator quality. I'm going to hop really quickly to another kind of similar use case, which is specifically about evaluating models. And it's going to look very similar. I'm going to go to this members page, and I'm going to see I have 2 different predictions or model versions, excuse me, where we kind of generated predictions. In this case, these were generated using our prompts feature, which Sherry will show off in a second. But we have I'm testing 2 different prompts or 2 different base models, and I want to test those against the ground truth. I want to see how good my prompt is doing. And I can see, okay, well, test A GPT is doing better than test A custom. And I can do the same type of deep diving. I can filter by label and see, okay, how are they doing? But then also I can just get straight to the point and dig into the specific tasks where things are not performing well. So because I clicked on the model, now I see my agreement selected is just comparing ground truth versus this model that we're investigating. And I can filter even further by just doing agreement selected equals 0. And I can see, okay, here are all the ones that I need to deep dive on to understand how do I need to improve my prompt. Maybe I need to give the context a little bit, a few more examples in the few shot. I can see, okay, test A is saying is positive, or the custom one's saying positive. So you would do a very similar type of experience here, but at the model level. And this is just a way to show off that we have this flexibility that depending on your use case, we can kind of very gracefully uh, move you into that use case. So that's it for my demo. But the quality concept doesn't end there. So I'm actually going to pass this over to my main man, Ricardo, who's going to talk us through some of the, kind of usability and enhancements that we've been making.
Thanks, Alec, and hello, everyone. So this year we've had our heads down working on a ton of quality of life improvements across Label Studio, all centered around speed. Many of you probably caught a glimpse of Alec powering through Label Studio effortlessly just now. So live as of today, we're enabling the command palette. By pressing Command K on Mac or Control K on Windows and Linux, you can now search and navigate to the main sections of Label Studio, find workspaces or projects, and even search for individual settings inside a project. It makes navigation instant. Rewinding a bit to earlier this year, we released dark mode. More than just giving Label Studio a sleeker look, we thought about giving your eyes a break in low light working sessions. You can switch it on from the account menu by clicking on your avatar on the top right. Next slide, please. We also introduced our AI assistant, and we wanted it to be genuinely helpful. It's an expert on the Label Studio documentation, but better yet, on the labeling interface setup, you can type a prompt such as create a template for image classification with these specific labels, and boom, it generates the actual labeling interface code for you. Next slide, please. We also wanted to tighten up the loop on how your team communicates and works. By sending email notifications to annotators when a project is ready to be worked on, or when they get tasks assigned to them, just to mention a couple of the recently added email notifications. Finally, we know everyone works differently, or maybe you have some muscle memory from other tools. That's why we introduced custom hotkeys, allowing you to map your most used keyboard shortcuts exactly how you want them. These are just a few of many of the quality of life improvements we have introduced this year. And why did we prioritize all these? To remove friction so you can focus on what really matters, getting high quality data labeled easier and faster. And now let's talk quality with Cherie.
Awesome. Thanks, Ricardo. I'm going to steal over the screen and let's go on from there. So Alec and Ricardo talked a lot about quality from the perspective of your annotators' workflows, from the perspective of your data, and also from the perspective of the experience in Label Studio. We're also going to talk a little bit more now about quality from the perspective of your models. So you've spent all this time building a data set or maybe evaluating data with your human signal. But we also have users who want to understand, like, now that I have this data, like, what's the outcome of it? How is it improving my model? How is it moving the needle? And that's where I'm going to talk about benchmarks. And benchmarks are these vetted data sets that help you be able to measure the impact, so measure the improvements in models in a way that's reproducible and reusable and interpretable by whoever is trying to understand the quality of the model. So we kind of started off this journey by hearing a lot of asks about kind of replicating the benchmarks that were out there. Some of these benchmarks that were out there were, for example, the OpenAI Health Bench. And, we had a case where someone wanted to replicate OpenAI's Health Bench on custom data with custom criteria. And that could be pretty great if you have the same task that OpenAI's Health Bench is testing for. However, you might have your own custom data and your custom criteria. So how do you now kind of rework this framework and build it on your own data? So we've set forth on this task of enabling users to build their own benchmarks with interfaces in Label Studio designed for subject matter experts who might not be so technical. And so we're actually going to do a focused workshop on this on Friday, and I'll send over a QR code. I'll have a slide for that in a bit. But to give like an overview of benchmarks and this framework that we've set. The first step, and I'll show a demo for this as well, is we're going to build a benchmark. So this includes capturing the test cases that matter to you and also defining the evaluation criteria that your subject matter experts would look for in these test cases. Secondly, we're going to score model responses. So from the models that you have, whether you're running the model or the agent or the system online or offline, we have the ability to do both with Label Studio. You can take a look at the full traces, take a look at user feedback, and combine human evaluators for that nuanced judgment with automated workflows such as LLM judges to scale the number of tasks that you can evaluate. And then finally, we'll analyze and look at the patterns in system behavior. So things like, are there trends that I'm seeing with failure modes, or are there themes in how my models are responding? And depending on what your goal is with this evaluation, whether it's to identify the strongest foundation model to start building an agent off of, or if it's to evaluate how well your own system has improved between different versions, that's what benchmark can help you do. You build this vetted data set with your subject matter experts, and you are able to capture a definition of quality using some scoring metric. So I'm going to switch over tabs now to this Label Studio tab, where the task here is now to build a rubric for a given user query, and I have a sample AI response to help guide me. So in this example, I am building a rubric, a task-specific rubric for a given task in my benchmark. I've got the user query that could be, in this case, it's a healthcare patient query, and I am defining some sort of themes or axes to tag this question. And then I can add rubric criterion that a clinician or an expert would want to see in an ideal response. And in this case, I can type in another response and say, like, call 911 if it's emergency. And then for any criteria that I add here, I can also assign a point value to show the relative weighting or relative importance for each of these rubrics. And so you can imagine we can do this for all of our tasks. And if once we get to a point where we have a set of different, user queries and a set of different rubrics, we can then reproduce and rerun this benchmark with a bunch of different models and just plug in their AI response. How that might look in Label Studio now is an interface such as this one. So in this case, I already have my rubric on the right-hand side. So this might be the same rubric criterion we just filled in. And then I have a patient query and a patient response now. And my task in this second project here is now to evaluate. So I'm no longer creating rubrics, but I am someone who is taking a look at this AI response here, talking about chest pain during exercise, and is providing advice on what to do in that case. And I can now click on different, rubric criterion given the instructions I'm provided and start measuring how good this AI response was against the patient query. And since I have this rubric to guide me, we can start to measure in a more reproducible way, in a more consistent way. Now, that does take a good amount of time sometimes when we have a number of different criterion, a lot of different tasks, or maybe a lot of different models or model versions you're testing against. And so we've also introduced a new feature called prompts. You navigate to that via the left-hand nav, and it's an interface where you can set up different LLM integrations into your projects. In this case, I'm setting up an LLM judge where I have judge instructions as well as the same tasks from my benchmark. And I am testing for each task and each AI response. How good was it? But I'm getting the LLM to do in this case. You can pick a different model, you can provide the LLM with different instructions, and it will pre-fill and respond the same way maybe an expert would. And then you can do the whole workflow that Alec talked about, where you can compare how good different judges are, how good or how aligned judges are with humans, and identify which one you actually want to use to help expedite your evaluation workflow. So that's the LLM judge component. And if you want to dive into any of that deeper at all, Michaela and I are actually going to have a workshop on Friday that puts this into practice. We'll be going into Jupyter Notebooks and also Label Studio projects to build this whole workflow that I was just showing. And so we'll go in a bit deeper. I'll send in a link into the chat as well, and hope to see some of you there. Okay, so we just talked about quality from both the workflow perspective and also quality from a benchmarks and model evaluation perspective. But all of this ties into kind of really enterprise use cases where you need to make sure your data quality is good, your model's performing the way you expect. And on Label Studio, we want to make sure that also our annotation managers and our admins and owners are able to get the right visibility and the right control into everything related to their data models, Label Studio. And so with that, we've also introduced, oops, we've also introduced some new analytics. So I'm going to show how that looks here. In the cases where you have a lot of different projects or you're trying to scale your projects, you might want to see an overview of how everything is going across Label Studio. So we've released a new dashboard called Analytics. You'll also find it in the left-hand navigation. Where there's annotations and reviews. And for both of these cases, you might want to understand, how are my annotators doing? How are my projects progressing? And that's kind of where you would be able to find all this information. You can monitor who's labeling and how much they're labeling. You can see per user stats of who completed what, how much, tasks per or time per task, and also total tasks completed. This view provides you an ability to spot any issues, such as maybe contributors who are, getting a lot of rejections, or maybe some users have a big backlog and they're not progressing as fast as others or as fast as you'd expect. This also helps you detect potentially annotators with high rejection or suspicious activity. And also overall, if you have multiple projects and multiple different annotators, you might want to understand how can I balance the workload so my projects are all getting enough, folks taking a look at it. Maybe you want to redistribute tasks or add in more members that way. And so we've provided this view for not just annotations, but also reviews. And so anything related to any of these users, you can take a look at. If you are an annotator or a reviewer yourself, you'll be able to also access this page and be able to see your own metrics. So you won't be able to filter for, everyone in the organization, but you can see the work that you've done so that you can learn and see how you're progressing. And something else we released this year is custom permissions. So I just talked about how annotators and reviewers can see their own dashboards and their own analytics. But if you are an admin and you actually don't want some of your users to access specific pages, you can actually now control all of that with our custom permissions. This is for admins to manage who can access what sorts of pages, what sorts of permissions. So maybe you want to limit who can invite members or who can access Label Studio via API. And so all of that is configurable now via our new permissions tab, which is very awesome. All right, cool. And that being said, I'm going to hand it over to Michaela now to talk about some of the other improvements around enterprise visibility and control.
Thanks, Sherry. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Give me 1 second. My Zoom always gets a little wonky when I do this. Alrighty. So we have a whole bunch of other and cool enterprise improvements that we've done this year. The first in enterprise that we've added a storage connector for Databricks. So if you are already using Databricks in your system and you want to connect your Databricks information or data to Label Studio, that is now easier than ever. We've also released a number of new ML backends this year, which are ways that you can connect models in real time to Label Studio, usually for the purposes of pre-annotation or pre-labeling. You can see here on the screen the list of all of the examples that we have on our GitHub repository. But of course, you can always write your own. And if there are more that you want to see, let us know. Just a quick note, I know we saw in the chat someone is very excited about the SAM 3 model that was just released a couple weeks ago. We do have a couple of SAM backends already that should work with the new SAM 3, although I haven't looked into it that deeply. That'll be definitely on our list in the next couple of weeks. Moving on, you might want, in your case, to put your own logo onto Label Studio, and that is also possible with the release of our new white labeling capability this year. If you're interested in white labeling your Label Studio instance to have your own brand colors or logo, definitely talk to your customer success manager or sales team about that. So now we're going to go into developers and connectivity. I'm so excited to share both some new upcoming features as well as some uh, new things that we've released this year. So it'll be a mix of teasers and things that are already released. So the first thing that we're going to release this year, that we're releasing as we speak, is what we call React tags. React tags are a new way to label any type of data in Label Studio that we might not natively support, as well as non-native question types. So here you can see in this GIF, we have an interactive Likert scale that does on-the-fly scoring. We also have some agent evaluation traces, some other types of invoice tracing. You can really take this and customize any type of interface that you might want. We call these programmable interfaces that are powered by React tags. I know you might be thinking, Michaela, the world seems like so possible. What could I possibly do with this tag? And for that, I would like to show you one of our newest interfaces that our very own Dave built. You might be familiar with the game Wordle from the New York Times. This is the one where you go in and you type five-letter words, try to guess what the word might be. In this particular project, we've gone ahead and uploaded our target words as data. And when we click on the Label All Tasks button, am I showing the right screen here? Can I get a nod from somebody? Perfect, thank you. You can see now that I have the full Wordle game in my Label Studio instance. So I can go ahead and type any five-letter word I want. I'm going to go with apple, and we get the scoring right from Label Studio for what we want to do. I am not so good at Wordle. This is my most cancelable trait, is that I'm not good at Wordle. And so I'm going to go ahead and know what the answer is and say that judge is the answer here. And we know that I have now won in two guesses. And when I go ahead and click submit, that data gets stored as an annotation. So when I go back to my data manager in the project here and I click on my task source view, I can see that my annotation data gives me whether I won, what the word was, how many guesses it took me, all that good information that we always get from Label Studio. The world is absolutely your oyster with React tags. You can do all types of interactive data types, interactive scoring, interactive programs. We really encourage you to check it out. Definitely talk to your customer success team, your sales managers, or reach out to us if you want to learn more about programmable interfaces powered by React tags. Uh, you can also, most of our React tag interfaces are actually vibe coded. So you can vibe code your interface pretty well in various tools and go ahead and drop them into Label Studio. So it's a really cool feature. We really hope you enjoy it, and we can't wait to see what you build with it. The next thing that we've introduced this year is the ability to embed your Label Studio instance into whatever other application you might want. This goes a really long way towards tackling the code switching problem. So I'm going to go ahead and switch here to a Colab notebook that we released as part of our tutorials that I'll talk about in a minute. And you can see here that in this collab, we're talking about the context switching tags. So maybe I come from a data science background. This is a world I'm very familiar with. Let's say that you are deep in a Jupyter notebook trying to fine tune your model. You need a little more data. It's kind of a lift to go back and forth from your Jupyter notebook into Label Studio, back to your Jupyter notebook, back to Label Studio, on and on and on. And so instead, if I scroll down here, we'll see that I can set up my Jupyter notebook or my Colab notebook to hold my Label Studio instance right inside my task. So here we have the cell. It's going to grab the next task. It's going to display it using HTML. And now I have my Label Studio instance embedded into my Colab notebook where I can go ahead and I can evaluate right here. So let's say that I want to give it a 5 for medical accuracy, a 4 for safety. We're just going to arbitrarily click some stars here for the sake of the demo. We'll approve it. There are no issues. We'll add some additional, we don't have to add additional notes, and we'll go ahead and click submit. And you can see that this has been annotation saved successfully. And if I were to go back to my Label Studio instance and open this project, I'd be able to see all of that annotated data right here. And I can also work with it directly in this notebook. So the world is totally your oyster here as well. And depending on what you're trying to do, where you're trying to do it, you can embed Label Studio into whatever other applications you want. This is also a really great way to help get your subject matter experts in Label Studio working quickly and efficiently in systems they already know and love with easy interfaces. And this supports all of our regular tags and React tags as well. So whatever you build in Label Studio is embeddable in other systems as well. With that, we're going to also jump to some other improvements that we've made this year from a developer and connectivity standpoint. The first is that we've updated to our second version of the SDK, which comes with improved SDK documentation. Our second level SD or second version of the SDK rather has reached full parity with the API. It's all in one unified documentation now, and you should be able to use the SDK to be more powerful than ever before. We hope you check it out and check out our documentation here. And finally, we've uploaded a number of new resources and tutorials this year, some of which written by our engineering team themselves to help you get the most out of your Label Studio experience. This covers everything from comparing multiple AI models, connecting to Hugging Face, creating benchmarks, debugging agents, and more. You can check it out at labelstud.io/tutorials. I know I'm speeding through a lot of these things, as Dave just mentioned, in the sake of time. But the key here is that we've really made Label Studio this year capable of doing anything you might need to do in any way that you might need to do it. So definitely talk to your customer success team about all of these new features, and we'd love to help you make the most out of them. And that's a wrap on today's Wrapped webinar. If anyone has any last minute questions, we do have a couple of extra minutes here if you want to drop them in the chat. I know we've been answering them as we go here. Alec, I believe you wanted to answer the one about agentic evaluations.
Yeah, so there was a question, do you store live agent data in traces or do you bring the agent trajectories afterwards? So the answer is kind of both. Like you can import and label like any structured data you want. So you can kind of do it in your observability platform, pull it into ours and do kind of more structured evaluation. But the one that I demoed initially was like a live back and forth connecting to a live LLM. So definitely the devil's in the details. And we, if there's functionality that we don't support, we would love to work with you and kind of build towards that.
Great. Thanks, Alec. We also had another question here. Is it possible to evaluate agentic application that uses RAG or GraphRag hooked to our proprietary data such that it stays protected? That's a great question. The answer to that is absolutely yes. And there are a couple of different ways you can go about it. The first is that all of your on-prem installations of Label Studio, be it open source or on-prem Starter Cloud or on-prem Enterprise, we don't have access to any of your data. So that's all secure there with you. You can also always use our machine learning backend, the ML backend, to connect any kind of model you might have, including RAG and GraphRag, into Label Studio for pre-labeling. Again, we don't store any of that data. You host those models on your own, so all of that data should stay protected. If you have more questions about that, we'd love to speak to you. And with that, I'm going to officially wrap our Label Studio Wrapped for this year. Thank you so much for joining us. We hope you've had a wonderful time learning about all of the new features that we've released this year. We're certainly glad to have shown them to you. And we can't wait to see what 2026 brings. Stay tuned for a follow-up email that will include a lot of links and follow-up information about the things you might have seen today. And definitely reach out to your salespeople if you have, or your CSMs, if you have further questions. Have a great end of your year. Have a great rest of your day. And we can't wait to see you in 2026. Bye, everyone.